Among the world's most renowned spies, Pierce Brosnan continues to enjoy immense fame. Obviously, that is a joke. His stunning performance as the smart, stylish spy has brought the original 007 James Bond film series back to life, and for that, we are eternally grateful. Like the mysterious Bond character, Pierce's real life contains elements that would astound you and a large number of his admirers. Let's investigate the actor's limelight to uncover any secret untold truths. Even though he had a troubled upbringing, Pierce's carpenter father was a mystery to many of his admirers. Regrettably, his carpenter father left his mother and him while he was a little child. To add insult to injury, Pierce's mother also chose to abandon him. She uprooted Pierce's life when he was 4 years old and went to London to get a nursing degree. His grandparents were so left to care for him. Just like that, this would also quickly become a terrifying nightmare. Due of Pierce's grandparents' passing. Interestingly, his parents didn't come back to get him because of this. After his grandparents passed away, he lived with his aunt and uncle for a while before he was placed in a boarding house. I was placed in the care of a woman named Eileen, who lived in a rundown area of town, according to his account. Lodgers lived with her alongside her own children. I was taken upstairs with the lodgers, all grown men with jobs, after she consented to let me stay. One of them was a mill worker. One was employed by a regional financial institution. Pierce then goes into extensive depth about his living situation. Whoever came in for a visit might find another bed. Arranged along the length of the room were wrought iron beds adorned with weathered mattresses. The 3 lodgers were in this same spot. So that the light wouldn't shine in when the boys got home, I attached newspapers to the curtain that surrounded my small bed at the far end of the room. He went on to say that he had a rather lonesome childhood. Plus, I bet you're on board with this. Considering that neither of his parents is around. It seems really dreary all of this, but that's what it was, he remarked once on the matter. Even though it's no surprise that I'm an actress, I've learned to find joy despite of all. Among other things, you figure out how to forgive and how to make your own joy. Because they have harmed you and because you had nowhere else to turn, you learn to put it behind you and to see people through a new lens. You learn to fend for yourself because there was no parental figure or symbol to lean on. Even if you were unaware, you pretended to be aware. Pierce implied that he and his mother were both impacted by his father's absence as a child by saying he had no idea who his father was. Being Irish Catholic in the 1950s with an absent father meant immense hardship for the mother and wife, the actor said, so he could understand why she would leave. Mom was a courageous woman, he said, even though she left when I was a baby. She had the gall to uproot our family and become a nurse in England, ostensibly in search of a better life for us both. My mother would stop by around twice a year. His mother left him 6 years ago, but he finally got a better life. Upon reaching puberty, Pierce's mother had tied the knot with William Carmichael and relocated to Scotland, where he had lived with the Nidri family for many years. After that, she took Pierce to see her, which was the first time he had ever left Ireland as a small boy. Carmichael, Pierce's stepfather, took him to see the James Bond film Goldfinger about this time, therefore this is when Pierce first heard the name James Bond. Pierce said, in Ireland, I had been brought up on a diet of Old Mother Riley and Norman Wisdom movies, which would not translate to readers in America, but they're black and white comedies made here. With my mom and Bill, my stepfather, took me to the movies in the summer of 1964, where I watched Goldfinger. Have a listen to his thoughts while he watched the film. Then there I was, enthralled by the James Bond film as I sat in the theater on Putney High Street. There was music, there were women, there were shimmering outlines of nudity, and there was this amazing woman on the bed. Here I was, in the vast metropolis of London, just 3 or 4 weeks after being in a little town in Ireland. Maybe it was there when the idea for James Bond was born, but I always thought he was awesome. It was an incredible experience for the young guy, who had no clue about his destiny, and the film obviously spoke to his spirit. After deciding to uproot their family from Scotland, Pierce's mom and stepdad assisted him in enrolling in school in London. But there were some dark clouds. Pierce, a young student, was the target of bullying at his new school. At his school, there were others who didn't even want to learn his name, they just called him Irish. To make matters worse, he said, the British have a wonderful way of making you feel that way, and I was much more isolated after that. Pierce dropped out of school when he was 16 years old to pursue a career in painting. Consequently, he decided to pursue a degree in commercial illustration at London's St. Martin's School of Art. You would hardly believe your ears when he told you that a fortuitous encounter would alter his career path. During Pierce's workshop rehearsal at the Oval House, he saw a fire eater who was instructing others in the art of fire eating. And then, for whatever reason, he halted to gain knowledge. Why? Listen to his arguments. There was a large gathering there, but I could tell that several of the women weren't wearing tops. Therefore, I decided to get in. While this street performer was showing us how to cross our breasts with flames, the young women were required to remove their bras. Bras weren't available back then. I decided to go to the class and get my fire-eating skills honed. Consider that a good argument in favor of training to be a fire eater. Unfortunately, our hero never gave up and eventually became a fire eater for a living. A skill that is still detailed on his resume. It seems like the fire-eating business stoked his zeal. His acting career was taking form, but he had no idea it was happening. They were chatting about movies while he was a student commercial artist in a small studio in Putney, South London, with a colleague from the photography department. Even though Pierce had always had an innate passion for film, he never really considered a career in acting. But the co-worker he was chatting with was actually a member of a theater company, and he extended an invitation to Pierce to join as well. His co-worker had offered him something, and he had been considering it for some time, so one evening he went down to the office to accept. When he first arrived, he was terrified, he said. I consistently turned down invitations to star in school plays. I didn't want to be in plays, but I thought they were pretty. However, I found myself in a pretty dimly lit studio, a workshop. Alongside 30 other individuals engaging in vocal and physical activities, which were entirely new to me, but quite thrilling. Everyone was free to be themselves without fear of judgment or stigma. He started showing up twice a week on the very first day. 3 times a week became his new routine. It didn't take long for him to start making it his regular post-work routine. After a while, Pierce's happiness with theater drove him to leave his career in commercial art and co-found the Oval House Theater Company with a few others. He claims to have been the youngest member among the group's performers, instructors, musicians, and writers. He decided to become a waiter since he was a young man who was suffering and had been living on his own for quite some time. To make ends meet, he would spend his days cleaning houses and working as a bottling plant worker. No matter the time of day, these were the tasks that were open to him. To him, it was irrelevant. There was no turning back his decision to become an actor. According to him, after deciding I wanted to be an actor, I visited the Chalk Farm Theatre Institute since the Oval House had ignited a fire within me. I was not fortunate in the realms of literature or the theater, and I lacked an education. I was merely an excellent street theater showman at that time. He enrolled in acting classes at the Drama Center and attended for 3 years. It took some time for the young graduate to land an acting role after graduation. Thus, he took a job at the York Theatre Royal, where he worked as an assistant stage manager in his acting capacity. However, his acting debut didn't take long to arrive. In his debut feature, The Long Good Friday, he played a member of the Irish Republican Army, IRA. Not that Pierce cared to squander time in his profession. Within 6 months, he was cast by Tennessee Williams as McCabe in the British premiere of The Red Devil Battery Sign, a drama written by Williams. William wrote a telegraph to Pierce simply saying, "Thank God for you, my dear boy," because of how well he performed. Even though it was only Pierce's second picture, he had already won over London. But he was still landing roles in movies. But as his star began to rise, he began performing on television. After landing the lead part in the hit US miniseries Manions of America, he shot to fame on American television. He landed a recurring role in the 9-part BBC miniseries Nancy Astor thanks to his earlier achievements. He was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor for his role in this miniseries. Pierce still had a lot of work to do before the accolades started rolling in. Cassandra Harris, his wife, luckily was there to provide him a hand. The Australian actress was introduced to him by David Harris, who happened to be Richard Harris's nephew. Even before Cassandra left drama school, she was a divorcee with 2 kids, Charlotte and Chris, from her first marriage. According to Pierce, what a beautiful-looking woman. He was completely captivated by her. I didn't think of wooing her or attempting to woo her, he said afterwards. All I wanted was to bask in her radiance and take it all in. After dating for a while, the pair tied the knot and then bought a home in Wimbledon jointly. His new wife's children were taken in by Pierce. The family was quick to greet the bundle of joy that was Sean, Cassandra, and Pierce's unborn child. As a new father, Pierce quickly learned that America was well prepared to welcome him. As a result, he and his wife uprooted and headed for Southern California. Borrowing money from the bank to make their move easier, the couple gambled on their dream of becoming Hollywood stars. Once in the United States, Pierce wasted no time in booking auditions for the following 2 weeks. He and his loved ones were lucky because everything fell into place on his first audition. Remington Steele, an NBC romantic comedy detective series, had cast him in the starring role. The family's financial status was altered as a result of the series. They had been having financial difficulties for some time, but as soon as he got this job, everything changed. The show also took a short trip to Ireland during the Remington Steele years, where Pierce had an unexpected visitor, Tom Brosnan. His long-lost father materialized out of nowhere. Pierce described what transpired. "Because of all the attention our trip to Ireland received, I was afraid my dad would make an appearance, and he did. Visiting the hotel on a Sunday afternoon was his plan. Many first relatives he brought up from Kerry were unknown to me. When you opened the door to the man who had knocked on your door, you could tell it was your father. When I opened the door, Tom was standing there. I was anticipating seeing a towering figure. With a twizzled jaw, flinty eyes, and medium-sized, back-combed silver hair, he stood out. In the midst of all those cousins, Tom and I sat down to afternoon tea as he spoke with a very strong Kerry accent." After 30 years apart, Pierce finally reunited with his father, and he recalled feeling like complete strangers. Then again, what else could they have been? Furthermore, he expressed his sadness that they were even forced to meet in such a precarious situation. "I wish we had met in a bar or some other private setting," he remarked. "I wish we could have had some quiet time to chat. Some aspects of my character I simply cannot fathom." He no longer considered his father to be a member of the family. Pierce sat across from his father and had a jumbled mental state. He subsequently discussed his ideas. Naturally, the debate inevitably revolved around the crucial question, "Why did you leave?" But how can one get to the point of asking such a question following an extended break? I was 33 years old. I had held a grudge against him. Plus, the meeting left me feeling furious. Reason being, I refrained from questioning him. Enough suffering had been endured. The meeting ended with little discussion about his father. Just like that, Pierce got back to work. In the same year, the Washington Post noted his potential as a youthful James Bond, the part of his history that he had long since disregarded. His wife's casting as Countess Liesl von Schlaff in the film For Your Eyes only revived Bond's name. She had brought Pierce with her to meet with producer Albert R. Broccoli, who oversaw the James Bond films at the time. Upon Roger Moore's retirement, Cassandra introduced her husband to Broccoli as the man who would succeed him as James Bond. "If he can act, he's definitely my guy," Broccoli said in the end. Using a rented beater automobile, Pierce and his wife returned to their lodgings after eating supper at Broccoli's house. The memorable phrase, "The name is Bond, James Bond," was uttered in jest by Pierce on the way back, when he reflected on the incident afterwards. It seems to reason that Pierce would be filming a Bond movie the next day, given these kinds of coincidences. The Bond issue, however, became more of a running joke between the husband and wife once Cassandra started working. Pierce admitted that he would occasionally pretend to be James Bond while driving her home from work, going out, or discussing her experience on the device. Playing James Bond was never a goal, though. Other parts of the piece were my focus. Pierce would not be seriously considered in the same context as the fictional James Bond for more than 10 years. Tragically, Pierce was thrust back into his horrible background from which he had fought so hard in 1991. His wife and he had been to India for his role as the protagonist in a Merchant Ivory play called The Deceivers. While filming in Rajasthan, India, his wife started to feel extremely exhausted and ill due to the scorching weather. He said, "We weren't sure what it was, but she became really exhausted." During a checkup 6 months prior, the doctor had assured her that her pain was minor and not to worry. If he had only paid more attention. Returning to London was our next destination after our time in India. The following night, she was admitted to the hospital after seeing the doctor. Ovarian cancer in its advanced stages was the official diagnosis. Pierce was taken aback by what he heard. Now the one person who had supported him was confronted with the prospect of death. The family's lives were turned upside down by cancer. If you're dealing with death, as Pierce put it, you're also dealing with the prospect of dying. Over the course of 4 years, the couple battled cancer through chemotherapy, 1-look operation, 2 looks, 3 looks, 4 looks, and 5 looks. According to Pierce, Cassie had an optimistic outlook on life. Her enthusiasm and perspective on life were truly remarkable. She has remarkable people reading skills. Above all else, her sense of humor was second to none. Her children have carried on her infectious laugh. Let us lament the loss of Cassandra in 1991. Her spouse spoke of the loss as terrifying, and he couldn't help but wonder, how do you carry on afterward? He had to raise his 3 children on his own after becoming a single father. The Bond film studios approached Pierce 4 years after Cassandra passed away. Pierce was cast in 4 Bond films in the end. He reached the pinnacle of Hollywood glory thanks to the movies. His late wife would have been very proud of him from where he stood. However, critics weren't as enthusiastic about Pierce's later films after the Bond films, maybe due to the film's monetary success. It seems this didn't faze him too much, because he kept making movies whenever the chance came his way. Regrettably, Pierce's happy existence was broken during the 2013 death of his adopted daughter Charlotte from ovarian cancer. Despite everything that had happened, he found solace in his family. Dylan and Paris were born to his second marriage to American writer Keely Shea Smith. Even though he isn't appearing in any major films right now, his influence on the film business has been greatly recognized. As recognition of his contributions to Irish cinema, the Irish Film and Television Academy bestowed upon him the Lifetime Achievement Award. In recognition of his distinguished service to the British cinema business, Queen Elizabeth II appointed him an honorary officer of the Order of the British Empire, OBE. When I found acting, or when acting found me, it was a liberation. It was a stepping stone into another life, away from a life that I had, and acting was something I was good at, something which was appreciated. He went on to describe the impact of his move into acting and the experiences that followed. To me, that was the pinnacle of personal fulfillment. Currently, Pierce is still a prominent advocate for environmental causes. He has made it a priority to advocate for women's healthcare after the struggles his late wife endured.